looked like the Second World War was going to happen. And there was a group of artists that decided they all wanted to leave, and Alaska was giving away pieces of land as part of the Homesteading Act. And so they sent a scout ahead, a guy named Yule Kilcher, my grandfather, who stowed away on a warship and made his way up to Alaska. He hiked over the Harding Glacial ice field with a ladder on his back. And every time there was a crevice in the ice, he'd lay the ladder down and walk across it and set it back on his back. It took him 2 years, but he found about an 800-acre homestead in a little town called Homer. And he sent word back to everybody in Europe that they could come on over, except that everybody had moved on with their lives by then, except for one woman whose name was Ruth. And she was an opera singer, an aspiring opera singer. And she decided that if she was ever going to have children, they needed to be born in a free country. So she left her family and everybody that she knew, and she married this guy that she hardly knew in Alaska. And she had 8 children in a dirt-floored log cabin. There was no electricity up there. There weren't even towns or groceries or anything. They actually would get to town. They'd have to wait for a low tide, and they would use the beach to get to town. They'd take a horse and wagon. So my dad grew up going to town in a horse and wagon like the 1800s. They hayed by hand, everything. My grandmother taught all of her children to sing and to play music. And my father looked like he was going to carry on where she left off. He made several albums and sang in hotels for tourists. I started singing with him and my mom when I was about age 6. And then when I was 8, my parents got divorced. My mom left us. And my dad took us back to the family ranch to raise me and my 2 brothers. I was raised in the saddle barn next to the cabin where my dad was raised. We had a coal stove and no running water, and we had an outhouse, but our ranch was so beautiful that my outhouse had a better view than a $1 trillion mansion. My dad, had to give up a lot of his career to raise me and my brothers. He taught me all the songs that his mother taught him, and we started singing in bars when I was about 8. And I did carry on where he left off. And my grandmother got to live to see me become successful. And she took me aside with tears in her eyes, and she started to cry because she said it was worth it to her to give up all of her dreams to see them come true for me, which is an amazing sacrifice. Can't imagine. So I wrote this song for my dad and for my grandmother. It's called My Father's Daughter. She stepped off of the boat to see flowers in his hand. The man she would marry was as hard as the mountains. She had his children in a log cabin. Soon I'd be another star in this family's constellation, in the land of the midnight sun, searching for gold. I am my father's daughter. He has his mother's eyes. I am the product of her sacrifice. I am the accumulation of the dreams of generations, and their stories live in me like holy water. I am my father's daughter. My daddy raised me in a log cabin, and he sang for me the songs his mother sang for him, in honky-tonks and empty bars, just me and him and that old guitar. He passed on a legacy wrapped up in a melody that I carry on, searching for gold. I am my father's daughter. I have my daddy's eyes. I am the product of their sacrifice. I am the accumulation of the dreams of generations, and their stories live